Today we're going to show you a quick tip on doing something a little bit different with Plastisol ink. This is part of the impressions, quick tips and trips for the blog and email newsletters. So here we have an opaque Plastisol. Now opaque inks, especially Plastisol, are all going to be very thick. And when they're printed on a shirt, though they might be bright and opaque, you're going to feel them on the shirt. So the advantage of doing something like Discharge is that Discharge seeps into the garment. Well, Plastisol is nothing like Discharge, or is it? With the type of additive that you can actually add into Plastisol inks, typically it's known as Plasticharge, you can actually take a normal Plastisol ink and make it a Discharge style of ink. So essentially we're kind of hybriding the two, which is really cool. It takes this thick ink, utilizes the color of it and the Plastisol properties of the ink, but then adds basically a discharge into it so it's nice and soft, but still fairly vibrant on the ink. So we recommend using more brighter colored inks. Like this opaque ink works great for that because it's got a lot of pigment in it. You wouldn't want to really use a very, very thin ink because this is going to really thin the ink down a lot. Now sometimes it's known as Plasticharge, sometimes it's like a discharge hybrid. So in the industry it's known as different things, but essentially what we're doing is we're adding a discharge base into a Plastisol ink. And if you're doing that, you don't want to use just a standard discharge because this is specifically made for the purpose of adding into Plastisol. So this mix is 50-50. We're going to take it on the scale here and mix in just a little bit to demo the ink. We're actually going to print this side by side so you can see a really cool comparison. So we'll put the Plastisol in first, and that comes out to 88 grams. And then we're going to put in 88 grams of the Plasticharge additive. Now this isn't Plasticharge actually, but it is the same style. Alright, so another 88 grams. It's going to bring us up to 172. And this is going to make it, you can see how runny this stuff is. It's going to make it very runny. Okay, there we go. And it's a little bit over. So now we'll go ahead and mix this up. Very, very good. So we're mixing that up so it's consistent. And that's what we're looking for, is consistency. Now we are going to add a standard discharge agent to this to activate it. So it's like a standard discharge agent, and we're going to add that in. With this particular mixture, it's 4%. Now, depending on the manufacturer, it might be a little bit different, but with this typical mixture, we're going to add 4% agent, and then we'll put it on press side-by-side comparison. So we're taking a high opacity Plastisol with a lot of pigment into it, adding in this basically this discharge base, this discharge Plastisol friendly base, and then activating it. So we've done that. Now we're going to add 4% agent. So 4% agent on 170. That's going to be 6 grams here. Up to 176. All right. Then we'll mix that in, let it activate. You want to let it activate up. And this needs to be mixed in very aggressively now because we're adding an agent. If it's not mixed in aggressively and allowed to dissolve in the ink, it will not activate correctly. So while that's mixed up there, we'll put it on press. So let's go over to the press and see how it prints. Okay, so we're on press now. We're using a 230 mesh screen, and we're using the 230 mesh screen to get a nice soft-handed feel. We're going to do a side-by-side test. The right side, to my angle, will be the Plastisol. Left side will be the Plastisol with the discharge base mixed in. Let's go ahead and print the Plastisol first. Now, obviously, printing an opaque Plastisol directly through a 230 mesh screen, we're not going to have the best results. It's going to give us not a very opaque print because it's a high mesh screen, and we're not going to be using a flash dryer. But we want to do this to illustrate the point of how it works. So we're going to pass this, and then we're going to pass this again to make sure we clear the screen. There we have our first half. Now it's not very bright at all, but it does show up and printed and cleared through this 230 mesh screen. So now let's go ahead and put the discharge mixed ink ratio. Now this is not standard discharge once again, so you don't want to go home, pull out some discharge out of your closet or your ink closet and then mix it into Plastisol ink. That's not going to work. This is a special type of ink. And if you can see, this is a lot more runny. I'm going to try to stay on the left side here. And then we'll print that again. So we printed both twice. Now, as you can see here, much duller, but definitely penetration in the garment. So let's dry it and see what happens. So right now that discharge is actually activating and basically taking the Plastisol pigments and dyeing them into the shirt. So it's kind of giving that cool hybrid effect of Plastisol ink plus discharge. So you can do something really cool. Here the shirts come, and we're going to see it change. Basically that left side should become a lot brighter than the right side is. Alright, so on the left side we have our Plastisol Discharge Hybrid. On the right side we have standard opaque Plastisol. And you can obviously tell the difference. Once this is washed, this will continue to feel like Plastisol, whereas this will be nice and soft like Discharge. So something a little different you can use with your standard Plastisol ink colors without having to add anything but a simple base and an agent. And you can use your standard colors to print some very cool, distressed looks on t-shirts.